Boom, we're live. My name is Patrick P.D. Delgado, the creator of the SPEAR and the CMARSPP'S life principles. My co-host is my best friend, Kenny Candia, the ambassador of the SPEAR and the CMARSPP'S life principles.
SPEAR is spelled SPPRR, which is an abbreviation for the 5 components of your life and how to manage each one individually. The first letter is S, and that's for spiritual. Next is P, and that's for physical. The next P is for psychological. R is for relationships, and the last R is for resources.
The premise of the podcast is education and fulfillment in each of those 5 components. The problem is there's a lot of misinformation regarding long-term success in any of those given components of your life. Applying the principles of your life SPEAR is the antidote to not knowing where to find long-term fulfillment. Remember, success is dependent upon the application of the information.
And because the principles that are taught here are unique every single week, this can't be found or duplicated anywhere else. So make sure to follow the weekly podcast and leave us a review and give us a comment.
Welcome to your Life SPEAR podcast, episode 10. Today is November 8th, 2023. We're on the 6th component, which is a letter S in CMARSPP'S. So that stands for sacrifice. Sacrifice is huge. It's one of my favorite. It's a component that is integrated into every other component of your life SPEAR. So in each component of your life SPEAR, so spiritual, physical, there's a sacrifice that has to be made in order for you to move forward anyway. So it's a law of sacrifice. It's a universal law. And so we can start out with let's start out with a spiritual sacrifice. What would be considered a spiritual sacrifice that you've made, Kenny?
I think over the course of my life, I made a lot of spiritual sacrifices. Being a worthy Christian and living Christian values, you have to sacrifice quite a few things. You can live in the world and not be of the world. One thing I sacrifice is drinking alcohol or taking drugs. The world makes it look like it's super good, it's normal, everybody does it. But I'm like, dude, there's a lot of consequences and bad things that can happen to you when you go down those routes. But when it comes to making a sacrifice, that is something that I would totally give up to reap the benefits. Going down that route is definitely taking those sacrifices to reap the benefits that come from living a clean and pure life. That's one of the first sacrifices I would make spiritually.
Yeah, I love in any of the 5 components of your life, this is where change happens. Change happens here. Where sacrifice starts, that's where the change starts. When you're comfortable, you don't grow. So we're talking about growing pains when you're stretching. What's the price you're willing to pay for you to move forward and to grow and expand? We have selfish priorities, things that we do on a daily basis. So if we're talking about the physical component of our life, certain foods that we have to sacrifice if we don't want to have a surplus of calories at the end of the day and increase our body fat, right? So that's on the physical. And then you look at psychological, let's talk about psychological sacrifices. One of them could be meditation, any form of meditation. You're foregoing your monkey mind, that mind that doesn't stop moving, doesn't stop thinking. You're able to calm your mind. So you're sacrificing in that moment. Now let's move to relationships. Relationships are huge. Think about the relationship of a mother or a parent to a child. Are you making sacrifices for your children, Kenny?
Oh, 100%, man.
So think about the sacrifice that a mother makes. She makes a physical sacrifice of her own body, which is huge. And we sacrifice a lot, but we definitely don't sacrifice our bodies. And then resources. So with resources, you have sacrifices that need to be made. So things that you want to be doing right now, foregoing that sport or activity you wanted to do, that's more of a selfish priority, and for something greater later, right? So you're foregoing those things now for something greater later. So you're saving up. So if you're talking about resources, your income, you're saving it rather than spending it. And when, for example, as a missionary, you're sacrificing a lot. Oh, by the way, we have some new additional things here to the episode 10. We're now going to be doing videos. So as you can see we've got some missionary memorabilia up here. And so on a mission, I had the experience of a lot of times where people would listen to us and would decide to join the church, and then their family tells them that they no longer are part of the family. So my mom and her family were disowned in Mexico City when they joined the church. That's what a lot of people do. When they join the church, they're sacrificing those relationships with their family members and friends for something greater. They know it's a cause. If we don't have a cause that we're willing to sacrifice for, what are we living for?
That's true. That's true. I want to jump back to spiritual components. For me, necessarily mean going to church or praying, doesn't necessarily mean all that. But spiritual, for something I sacrifice quite a bit with spiritual, is my time. For me, I do go to church and I do pray and I do read scriptures and I do all of that. But one of the big things I sacrifice, other than lifestyle, is time. Time is one of the greatest things that you can actually sacrifice, either for something greater or for your children. Time is better than, or not better, but it's more.
Yeah.
It means more than currency.
Mm-hmm.
So if you were to sacrifice time, you could apply that to every single letter of your spear, especially with relationships. So giving your time and sacrificing your time, it's one of the most important things that you can sacrifice, and apply it to every aspect of your life spear.
Right. You're sacrificing your emotional discomfort. You're sacrificing your comfort. And if it's easy, it's not a sacrifice. Time is a huge one, because once that time is spent, we can't get it back. You can sacrifice something monetarily, or it can be something with your time, efforts, talents, blood, sweat, and tears. At the end of the day, what it is that you sacrifice, on the other end of the sacrifice, is you growing and becoming better at whatever discipline it is you're trying to achieve. So you have to kill off the old you. You have to kill off who you were once before, right? So that's killing off, meaning some of the physically, if you're stop eating the foods that you were eating, start getting up earlier, or making the effort to exercise on a daily basis. These are your dailies. What is it you're sacrificing on a daily basis?
And the cool thing about sacrifices too, is that over time, it doesn't really end up being a sacrifice anymore, because sacrificing, it turns into a habit and it's turned into a lifestyle. So just the way you live now, but if you really dive deep into what you're actually sacrificing, like we did here, it doesn't seem like a sacrifice anymore. Let's say if I go to the gym every day, or I'm praying every day, all that stuff, I'm going to church every week, I'm sacrificing my time, but I don't look at it like that at all. This is just what I do. To start doing it and to build that momentum and to build that habit, you do have to sacrifice something to get the results you want in every aspect of your life sphere, or anything going down the path of life.
Right. We can't stay the same if we want to change. I want to talk about burning our boats. So are you familiar with the story of the conquistadors that arrived from Spain to Mexico?
It's crazy how they won that crap.
I know.
Nuts, man.
The whole story, right?
Yeah.
But the whole point is that they said, well, Hernan Cortes, when he turned around, told them to burn the boats, because he said, we're not going back. In other words, that's a sacrifice they're making. They're going all in.
Mhm.
They're saying that, just like in the military, failure is not an option. So think about what it is that you're willing to sacrifice. This is something to think about. What about fears? You ever thought about sacrificing fears? So on the other side of that fear, or that sacrifice, you're sacrificing fear, is your greatness, you being greater than what you currently are. This is a fun one. Glossophobia, the fear of public speaking.
Oh, dude, that's such a common thing, though.
Yeah.
I have a lot of experience in public speaking, but every time I get in front of a crowd, I get nervous. It's just, everybody gets those butterflies and gets nervous, but I feel like the feeling of getting nervous, or just people in general, it just makes you scared. I feel like there's a fine line between being nervous and scared, and then actually having fear. There's still a fine line between all of that. Never really had a fear of speaking. It's just scary for everybody.
Yeah.
Glossophobia. Ooh, man. I know. But so speaking in front of people, does it give you anxiety or something?
Oh, yeah,
You
100%.
do it all the
bro.
time just to like overcome that?
Yeah, exactly. It's doing the opposite.
Exactly, bro.
So I am more of an introvert, and one of the reasons why chose to pursue the podcast was because of the fear of public speaking.
So I want to cover a couple of topics when it comes to sacrifice. So if you think about, in general, I want to talk a bit about vices. For those who don't know what vices are, it's just something that it constricts your life.
Addictions.
Addictions, things that you just can't let go. Because if you did let them go, your life would be a lot better if you let them go. Like, for instance, the biggest vice I'd see is like someone smoking cigarettes or vapes or drugs or stuff like that. Where like you have to do it. You're so dependent on getting that fix or calm your nerves. Like your body's just so dependent on it. It takes away your agency. I'm a big advocate on moral agency and being able to choose for yourself. But when things in your life take away your agency, they're not good things, man. You have to sacrifice those things to get control of your agency again, your freedom to choose. So those are the few things I really just want to dive into. And vices tied directly into your psychological, or even your physical. Dude, think about it. Spiritual, resources, relationships. You're addicted to drugs. How are you going to thrive spiritually? How are you going to thrive in your business?
Addicted to food.
Yeah, addicted to food. Like even for instance, like drugs. Like how are you going to thrive in your relationships? Those are like that drugs are like the relationship destroyer. And this is like one of the biggest vices that
What if you're addicted to love?
addicted to love. Any addiction.
There's a song that says that. That's why I said
Addicted to love. Any addiction, I feel like it's just really, really bad. Even if you're addicted to church, you're addicted, man. Like,
bro, what?
like
You
it's,
just said you can't be addicted to church?
nah, bro. Like it's just everything in moderation, I'd say. But
We
even
can
if
see
you,
the temple right there.
I know. I wish I was addicted to going to the temple.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like the best things in life you're never addicted to. I don't know. But even if, for instance, like psychologically too, but if you want to get better sleep, what do you have to sacrifice? You have to sacrifice going to bed late
Yeah.
and not getting good sleep. That kind of really does mess with you. Getting in shape, you have to sacrifice all the food you like to eat. Not all the food you like to eat, all the junk you like to eat. Or going to the gym, the time to go to the gym. You have to sacrifice being lazy. You have to sacrifice a bunch of things in your life to get to the next level and to better yourself.
Even
Because if you don't,
relationships with friends and stuff.
you have to sacrifice your time, you have to sacrifice bad friendships. You have to really dive into that. This is something I haven't really spear and CMARSPP'S before the last year or so. I'm pretty new with it. I've been doing it for a year, but I apply these things naturally. And I'm sure that a lot of you people right now listening to this, you've been applying a lot of it naturally too. If you were to break down every one of your life spears, you'd be like, oh man, I have been doing that. No wonder why my life's going well. No wonder why I feel actually genuinely happy, because every single one of these principles I've been applying. And I'm a person that wants to get better. I listen to self-help stuff. I watch podcasts. I read books to improve myself.
But you're doing it,
Yeah, but you've actually been doing it.
practicing.
But now that you can have something where you can map it out and show you exactly why you've been prosperous and why you've been growing, and now you know exactly what to look at to improve. Now the sky's the limit. You can put it all on paper and take
Right.
a look at it.
Here's a level of sacrifice. So I want you to think about whether you're willing to sacrifice or consecrate, like Abraham or Isaac in the Old Testament. Abraham, his son, he was told to sacrifice his son on an altar. Right before he did it, God told him, all right, it's enough not to do it. And so you think about we talk about Abraham having a whole bunch of faith, willing to sacrifice his son. Your son was born. And think about sacrificing him.
Even that, they couldn't have kids. God blessed them with a kid. And then he wanted to sacrifice.
I wouldn't sacrifice my son. But now I want you to think about this. So his son, by the way, was older. So he's an adult. So in other words, he had the agency to choose. So the question is, he consecrated his life. He didn't sacrifice, he consecrated his life. And he knew what was going to come. And he still moved forward. There's the two levels of sacrifice. There's sacrificing. Are you sacrificing your life, or are you consecrating like Isaac? That's something to think about. Confessing our sins, bro. What about fasting? Fasting, fast offering, those are sacrifices. So these are spiritual sacrifices, but they're physical also. So that's why this sacrifice, I think that's one of the ways to understand how the spiritual world works in the physical world. When you are sacrificing by your tithing, and you're sacrificing your fast offerings so other people can eat that may not have enough to eat, that's where you get fulfillment.
And doing fasting as well.
The fasting.
This is for anybody. I know people that fast just to fast because it's a fad diet. But fasting, that's a quick way to get answers to prayers or desires in your life. Whether if you're a Christian, whether if you're a Muslim, most religions fast. Muslims, they fast for Ramadan every single year.
Yeah.
Fasting is you literally give up your food, your water, and you show God or your higher entity, and you put it out there in the universe. I'm doing this because I want this in my life. I'm sacrificing this. This is like your physical well-being. If you don't eat, you will die. So I'm sacrificing a portion of me going down that path and putting it out there, wanting something in your life.
Right.
If you want someone to get better, if you want a new job, it helps you take those steps, and it actually helps you truly achieve those goals that you want, because you're sacrificing something spiritually.
So I want you to understand the sacrifice. Let's keep it in perspective. I'm holding this up right here. This is a form of keeping a record of those sacrifices, your daily sacrifices, those dailies that we're talking about. You want to have the ability to see that and also have those endorphins and the serotonin that's released in your brain. It's part of the limbic brain system. So the emotional, those sacrifices, when those sacrifices are made, first you have to have something to sacrifice, something that means there's something of value. And that's what you're sacrificing for something greater, something of equal or greater value. That's that's a trade-off. That's a quid pro quo, something for something. That wraps it up.
Yeah. So stay tuned for our next podcast. We'll be going over the principle of the planned and why plan is super important in your life sphere and an AC Mars piece, why it's key. And just stay tuned. Boom. We are out.